All right, this is the copyright disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. And this video is not for any monetary gain. It is explicitly for the reasons stipulated in the Copyright Act of 1976 under Section 107.
And concluded, which was the general consensus at the time among a lot of white people in the South, this is again in the 1890s, that black people were genetically inferior. And in 1896, he published a book called Race, Tendencies, and Traits of the American Negro, in which he lays out all the numbers, and then he concludes that if we simply avoided allowing black people to have any access to health care, that within 2 or 3 generations, the whole race would die out, and that would solve the race problem in America. Now, it sounds kind of crazy when I just lay it out like that right now, but this led to a whole bunch of things. By the 1920s, this was referred to as scientific racism. He was testifying about it before Congress. When Teddy Roosevelt, 1912, proposed a national health care system, people said no because black people will get it. When Franklin Roosevelt proposed a national health care system, it was the same thing. We don't want black people to get it. When Truman tried it in 47, same thing. Don't want black people to get it. Right up until 1965, Senator Stennis, the Dixiecrats in the South, was quoting Hoffman, who was by then dead, but is still very famous in this field, as saying this. We have to figure out a way to keep black people from using Medicare. This is when they were passing Medicare. And the way that they came up with was to have a 20% a gap in Medicare, so that you had to pay 20% of your doctor's bill and your hospital bill. And that would discourage poor black people from showing up at the hospitals. I mean, it was the most shocking thing I discovered, Cenk, when I was doing the research on this book, is that nearly 100% of the reason why the United States is the only country in the world that doesn't define healthcare as a right and doesn't have any sort of national healthcare system to speak of is because of racism.
Breaking news, President Trump is now putting back $49 billion worth of medical debt back on Americans' credit reports. Back during the Biden administration, he had worked hand in hand with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in order to remove $49 billion worth of medical debt off of over 15 million American citizens' credit reports in order for citizens to apply for loans without having medical debt be the reason they're denied. And as we in the US know, one single ambulance ride to the hospital could put you in extreme debt beyond anything you could ever repay. To think that you wouldn't be able to apply for any sort of financial help after that simply because you had a medical emergency is unbelievable. Well, a Trump-appointed judge with direction from President Trump removed this rule and is now replacing $49 billion worth of medical debt back onto over 15 million American citizens' reports. And again, with our medical system being as expensive as it is, that should not be a factor in whether or not you should be able to buy a home. Now, even more Americans will be unable to buy homes, cars, or anything that requires a loan. So my question to you is America great again yet?
So Trump just reversed the rule that our medical bills will go back on our credit report. Just as people are losing their Medicaid and Medicare. You know what this means, don't you? If you can't afford your medical bills due to high copays, high deductibles, no insurance, your credit report is fucked. And when you start getting healthy again, and you got a job, they can come garnish your damn wages. You know, I wouldn't have voted Democrat for shit in this election. But there was one thing that Biden did that I agreed with, and that was making that rule that those medical bills wouldn't be on your credit report. But now that they've made these changes, they can come after your life savings.
Trump is trying to ban states from being able to wipe medical debt from Americans' credit reports. I agree with what they're doing. Let's dive into the details. We might as well, because this would hurt millions of Americans, as there are 20 million Americans who have medical debt that amounts to over $220 billion. And one of the reasons it sucks is because this debt destroys people's credit ratings. It makes it harder for them to obtain loans to buy a house or a car. But thankfully, there have been 15 states that have prohibited credit reporting of medical debt. And Joe Biden's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau tried to do this nationwide in January 2025 on his last days of office, which would have wiped $49 billion in medical bills from credit reports of about 15 million Americans nationwide. But then a court struck that down, saying they overreached. Yeah, but now Trump's Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, ran by Russell Vought, is set to not only not push for a nationwide ban, but he's trying to stop states from having the ability to wipe off this debt from credit reports on their own. All he's done is put forward a non-binding interpretation memo of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which according to him prohibits states from enacting their own rules on how credit information is collected, used, or shared. And he's asking courts to strike down states' ability to prohibit credit reporting of medical debt. Yeah, so it's not binding and will be up to the courts. Why would this be something the administration would push for, especially as recent reports have shown that many medical debts are the result of billing errors or insurance delays and not always predictive of credit risk? So it's important to note that the three biggest credit agencies have on their own taken steps to mitigate the effects of medical debt by removing all paid medical debts, no longer reporting unpaid medical debts under $500, and adding a 1-year waiting period before medical bills sent to collections appear on a credit report. Yeah, that happened in 2022 under pressure from the Biden administration, so you can thank them for that. Okay, so now the only medical debt being reported by credit companies is legitimate. Okay, why should we punish someone even more for getting sick? Not only are they in medical debt, but now you want to make it so they can't get a loan for a house or car as well? Look, when you pretend this debt doesn't exist in someone's credit report, you may hurt them even more, as it makes them look like they are eligible for a loan they cannot afford, and it can push them into even more unpayable debt and make their situation even worse. Well, it helps big businesses profit by decreasing their default risk, that's for sure. I mean, the Trump administration is on the side of big business here. Because in a system that hides medical debt, yes, companies take on more risk when deploying loans, and they pass that risk on to everyone else by raising costs and requiring higher interest rates for everyone. You'll learn a more efficient, transparent system helps everyone and brings down costs for everyone. What would really bring down costs for the 20 million Americans with medical debt is if we weren't the only major country where medical debt existed, where we punish people for getting sick. It's just such a shame that this administration's instinct is to side with business and make matters even worse for those in medical debt. I think this actually makes things better for them, but we disagree. You gotta hop through a couple hoops for that one, huh, bud? Not really. Yeah.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 19, verse 4, and it reads, "And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts." Giving all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rahakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like it to the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom. This is your brother Ayashar Barazal from the Indianapolis branch of the Great Millstone, coming back at you with another lesson that is edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. All right, got this article here. I'm not going to read the article. The videos that preceded this lesson pretty much gives you the gist of it. But I will put a link to this article in the description box, as well as the comments for you to read on your own. But yeah, Trump is that cruel Lord. You know, as you heard in each one of those video clips, this is about to mess a lot of people up. A lot of people up. Okay. But you can see who's complaining the most. I mean, definitely it's going to hit Jake. All right. As we, say all the time, we're definitely at the beginning of Jacob's trouble. But, that period, everybody's going to be in trouble. Jake is going to be the focal point because we are the Lord's chosen people. Okay. But, his elect are going to be saved out of it. All right. Let me go ahead and grab that. This is Jeremiah 30 and 7. All right. It says alas, and that word alas is interchangeable with woe, meaning death and destruction. Okay. For that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. And that he that's going to be saved out of it is the elect. Okay. Which is 144,000 rulers and judges, and the rest of the innumerable multitude that makes up the 1/3. You know, we know some of us will be martyrs in this truth, but according to First Thessalonians 4, towards the end, between verses, I want to say 15 through 18, it said those who died in Hamashiach will rise first. Okay, then those of us are left behind will be caught up in the air and the clouds with them. All right, so yeah, but you know that very first clip, that's what has Babylon the Great, aka America, in this predicament right now. The only country that does not have universal health care, and in some cases very cheap, you know, with a lot of coverage. You don't have it because you didn't want the so-called black man to have it, Jakes to have it. And now look at you. All right. I mean, it's like this. How do you vote against it, even within your own company? Corporate companies at the time, you know, the more people that participated in the healthcare program, you know, the premiums came down. All right. But you didn't want that. You didn't want Jake to have access to it. All right. And then you see now who's complaining about what Trump is doing. But that's going to mess up a lot of people's credit. You're not going to be able to do anything if they put all of that back. All right. And it looks like that they're going to. All right. But you didn't want Jake to have part of that. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 26. And verse 27. It says, whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. All right. And that's exactly what is happening. You know, these curses, you know, everything you meant ill for Jake, you know, is fucking you up too. All right. The only thing is the difference between you and you so-called white people and Jake. You know, Jake is very resilient. A lot of stuff we used to is like the norm. Okay. But you the ones can't handle it because you've always had that privilege. As much as you try to deny it, you've always had that privilege. And now he's showing you right in your face. He don't give a fuck about you either. It's about taking care of big business. You know, him making a profit. You know, by doing this, he surely is going to get a kickback. There's some backdoor deal going on to get at. You know, this is in favor of the collectors. You know, they collect all that money, and you had interest build up on it. You know, he'll definitely get a kickback. Okay. Says a lying tongue hateth those that are afflicted by it. And yeah, saying that we were inferior, you know, we know that you hate us, you know. It's suffice to say, a lot of us don't care about you all either. You know, knowing your history. I know a lot of the ones who preach this word don't, you know, the hopeful elect. And a flattering a mouth will worketh ruin. Yeah. Look at you. You're about to be ruined credit wise. All right. But that's all this stuff coming back on you. All right. This is Deuteronomy 30 and 7. And Yahweh thy power will put all these curses upon thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee. Yeah. look at it. Look who's crying. I haven't seen one clip where, you know, Jake is complaining about this. I'm sure they out there, but they are very minuscule. But in terms of Jake, now, don't get me wrong. A lot of this stuff, you know, there are some conditions you can't help. All right. But a lot of you Jakes that, you know, have eaten your way into unhealthiness, you know, you scoffed at the prophets telling you about the abominable foods, you know, not taking care of your body, you know, all of those things are important. All right. Our diet is right there in the scriptures, Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14. Very clear, but nope, Jake wants to ignore it. All right. But this universal, man, they release all of that debt back onto those credit reports. If you haven't paid those bills, and like I said, there's no telling, you know, how that's going to affect, because you know those people uh, didn't get rid of that. You know, they're looking at all the, you know, the finance charges that have accrued. So it's not just going to be the last bill that you saw. All right. Yeah, you got to pay that stuff off. And man, that's, you know, that's why we definitely, you know, speaking of Jake, you know, you got to take care of that health. You got to take care of that health. You know, we know that the food is messed up. You know, the scriptures tell us that. All right. This is Ezekiel 4 and 13. It says, and Yahweh Bashem Yahushai said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them. Okay? Whither I will drive them. That's in these lands where we were scattered to. The food is defiled. We know it's going to cause certain issues, but this is part of the punishment for being disobedient. At the same time, the Lord said he has not cast away his people. All right. So he, you know, hey, he can make it the way, you know, this defiled stuff is not going to hurt us. But you got to fear him. All right. We know we're in captivity, but what are we supposed to be doing? Rehearsing the righteous acts. Okay. This is Judges 5 and 18, I believe. Nope, or was it 10? Just like it, Judges 5 and 11. Okay. It says, they that are delivered from the noise of the archers. Okay. What's that? Those nuclear missiles. Okay. We know the arrow, like that movie Broken Arrow. That's what those mean, missiles. All right. It says, they that are delivered from the noise of the archers and the places of drawing water. What does that mean? Places where you in servitude. If you go back to Joshua, you know, when they made that covenant, all right, that vow, I think it was to Hamites. Let's see, I got it marked here. You can go check it out yourself. Notes. Okay. Judges 5 and 11 makes reference to Joshua 9 and 21, 23, and 27. So let me grab that right quick. Joshua 5 or 9, I'm Salakia. To 23. Okay, now therefore ye are cursed. Okay, yeah, this is because they tricked them. All right. Let me start at verse 22. And Joshua called for them, and he spake unto them, saying, wherefore have ye beguiled us, saying, We are very far out from you when ye dwell among us. It says, now therefore ye are cursed, and there shall none of you be freed from being bondmen and hewers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my power. So yeah, that's where we are in servitude. Let me go back to that Judges 5 and 11. All right. Start back from the top. They that are delivered from the noise of the archers and the places of drawing water, servitude, there shall they rehearse the righteous acts of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, even the righteous acts toward the inhabitants of his villages in Israel. Then shall the people of the Lord go down into the gates. All right, rehearsing those righteous acts. What are we doing? In the places where we're in servitude, doing our very best to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments. All right. And one of those is having a proper diet, according to Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy chapter 14. All right. Very clear on the things we can and cannot eat. But Jake don't want to pay attention. So now you got these huge ass hospital bills that were at some point going to be written off. Now look at you. You know, this stuff goes through. That's going to jack up a lot of stuff. All right. But the prophets were warning you about eating correctly and you didn't want to listen. All right. So now you got this guy coming down, you know, with this removing that stuff. You know, some of those hospital bills are not cheap. Like the lady said, you know, just the ambulance itself. It's crazy. They charge you for like every tool that you use, you know, surcharges and stuff. Just crazy. But hey, Jake, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I should have been listening. I mean, this dude is not playing. You know, I said everything that's meant to hurt us, you know, it's gonna come back on them. But you know, he don't care as long as it gets Jake. He don't care about his own folks. You know, especially ones that are poor, and he's showing them that. This is Sirach 14 and 5, or Ecclesiasticus 14 and 5. All right. It says, he that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He shall not take pleasure in his goods. He's got the whole world. According to Job 9 and 24, the wicked. All right. And it's not enough. His appetite is insatiable. All right. He has to screw somebody over, even if it's his own. And when it says he that is evil to himself, that him being evil to his own nation, you know. This is where you're going to have that Satan divided against Satan. You know, Esau versus Esau. While they going after Jake too, but this is a sign that we're in the end. All right. So with that, I hope this lesson was edifying to the elect body of the nation of Israel. Once again, I'm going to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in teaching us this 100% truth. Salutations to them and my fellow Akim who labor in this truth week in and week out on the highways and byways. Also, salutations to the hopeful elect of the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, scattered to the four corners of the earth, that be like to the speckled bird, also known as your Israelite foreigners, and your so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. To you, I say Shalom, Kwam Yasharala, Abab Bal. Shalom.